So, first off, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to get a sense of what the movie is about, click here to watch my non-spoilers review. Otherwise, if you just don't care about spoilers, here we go. What is going on with the critic reviews? What's with all the hate? I mean, come on. Because of that, I went in with the lowest of the low in terms of expectation. Especially coming from a Marvel film, where even the lowest rated film critically was a 66%, and that was Thor: The Dark World. And I fell asleep in that movie. So right off the bat, I can say that I walked out really pleasantly surprised by the movie, because that wasn't a 40. To me, that's a solid 80 to 85. And as of writing this, Rotten Tomatoes has an 81%. That's pretty close to how I feel. Yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but I was really glad that I saw this. I saw it in an IMAX theater, and that was absolutely worth it. What surprised me was that the trailers for this movie actually showed a bunch of stuff from all parts of the movie, with many of the scenes from the trailers actually spoiling a lot of stuff if you know where to look. The movie brings us into an MCU like we've never seen before, expanding its cosmic universe and mythology, and really making you feel like all the movies up to this point has been just ants running around, or watching something under a microscope really. Right from the beginning, we are given this scrolling text intro, which is definitely something we've never seen before in a Marvel movie. Explains that the universe was created by celestials, and this whole thing of creating life has always been part of their plan. Now, I'm not a comic book reader, so I don't recognize all the names mentioned there, but I got the gist of it, that they are basically the creators of the universe, and it has always been that way. Immediately, we cut to a narration by Gemma Chan's Cersei, explaining how they arrived on Earth. We see their triangle ship landing on Earth. I believe it was 5000 BC, and we see a dad and his son fishing, and suddenly being attacked by a deviant. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that Thanos is an Eternal with the deviant gene from the comics, so I don't know that they will be part of the MCU, but Thanos looks nothing like if you were to imagine an Eternal who essentially looks like a human with the deviant gene. Here, the deviants look like they are made of some organic ropes or vines or tendrils of some kind, and Thanos definitely doesn't look like an Eternal with tendrils. Anyway, so the Eternals show up and they protect and fight off the deviants, and here we see most of them use their powers. Robb Stark's Icarus can fly and use his laser eyes. Everyone else gets off the ship with these steps made by Brian Tyree Henry's Phastos. Sprite then deactivates invisibility on everyone. We see Kingo shoot these little lasers from his fingers, but the force of it is much stronger than it looks like. Makari runs fast, saving people and using her speed to knock into things. Thena cuts up stuff, and Gilgamesh punches stuff. Then Ajax heals Icarus. The only person I think we didn't see was Cersei here, but we do see her then in modern day going to a classroom that she's late to, and Kit Harington's character is covering for her. By the way, this happens throughout the movie, where it cuts to present day and then back to the past. We then cut to them at a birthday party and see Cersei and Harrington as a couple. They leave the party and walk the streets of London at night. Suddenly, a deviant shows up, and they fight it. It's here that Sprite really shows off her powers of illusion, where she creates multiple copies of her and Cersei, really confusing the deviant here. Icarus suddenly shows up and takes care of things. Cersei then saves Harrington by turning a London double-decker bus into rose petals. I think it's because Cersei is in love with Harrington, that's why she instinctively turns the bus into rose petals. Robb Stark and Jon Snow then stands face to face, and it's super awkward, but also a really good Game of Thrones reunion. So supposedly deviants have all been dead for centuries now, so Icarus and team are very confused. They then go see Ajax, as she is the leader, so they think that she might know what's going on. They arrive at the farmhouse at night, but the house is all destroyed and Ajax is nowhere to be found. They eventually find her dead outside, with their magic rune symbols embedded on her body, indicating that, yep, she's gone. Sprite and Icarus goes inside the house, while Cersei stays with Ajax. Then the glowing orb from Ajax that allows her to communicate with Arishem the Judge, the red celestial we see from the trailers, lifts out of Ajax's body and into Cersei's, telling her that Ajax chose her to be her successor. Arishem then tells Cersei not to disappoint him, or it, however you refer to a celestial. We then cut to the past to see how Icarus falls in love with Cersei, and you can see how he really admires Cersei's love for humanity. It's also here that we see the first sex scene of the MCU between these two. Anyway, so we cut to the team saying that they need to gather up the rest of the family. So they go visit Kingo. This is really funny, and it's the same scene from the trailers where we see Kingo filming some sort of music video or movie. Apparently, Kingo is now a huge Bollywood star that none of the rest of the MCU or its characters have ever mentioned or heard of. I guess they don't watch Bollywood. So now they got Kingo and his sidekick character on board, played by Harsh Patel. Then the movie cuts to the past again, where we see a huge war going on, and the team really wants to help, but they cannot interfere in anything unless some form of deviant is involved. And since they said that all deviants are now dead, they can't interfere anymore. And Druig is really unhappy about all this and leaves. Icarus tries to stop and convince Druig, and this is really the first time that we see Icarus really loyal to Ajak and the Celestials' orders. Druig leaves anyway, and he mind controls all the people fighting below to stop fighting, and they stop and leaves with him. And this is where it gets interesting, because we then see Thena kind of freak out and her eyes turn white, and Ajak said it's something called mind weary. Apparently, it's when her previous memories from other planets are starting to dilute into her current memories, and it messes her mind up. It's really here that we learn that they have been to many planets before this. She goes insane and starts attacking everyone. Gilgamesh then steps in and really just knocks her out. The whole family then goes their separate ways, and Gilgamesh says he'll stay with Thena and look after her. So, back to present day, where we see the team visit Gilgamesh and Thena in a desert. By the way, the landscape and the scenery is just beautiful, and from what I've read, Chloe Zhao really wanted to shoot on location as much as possible, and it really shows. So this is one of those places that I'd love to visit someday. Kingo is hilarious here, as his sidekick is filming the entire journey with what looks like an incredibly expensive shoulder-mounted camera. Gilgamesh comes out in a super cute apron and is apparently now into baking pies. They have lunch together, and this is the scene in the trailers where Icarus says he can lead the Avengers. They then go out to see Thena, and she's still crazy as before, but it seems Gilgamesh is the only one who can calm her down. Kinda like how Black Widow is the only person who can calm down the Hulk, but in reverse. Somewhere along the way, we find out that Cersei is talking to Arishem, and he basically tells her of how the universe works. Apparently, the Celestials created universes and planets, inhabits them with life, and at a certain point when there is enough energy from living things on that planet, an event called the emergence will happen. This is basically where the cosmic scale of the movie starts to really show, as we find out that every planet with life is basically an egg for the new Celestial. And when there is enough energy from living things, the Celestial will pop out of the planet, destroying the planet in the process. The Celestials also created the Deviants to make sure that the living beings on a planet don't die off, but they sort of lost control of them, so then they created the Eternals to counteract the Deviants and keep them in check, to make sure that that life goes on, to create energy for that celestial egg, aka the planet. We also find out that the Eternals are basically factory made, and they are really not alive because they are programmed to do just one thing, which is get rid of Deviants on a planet. This kind of feels like the whole universe is some kind of factory to create the Celestials. So Celestials make galaxies and planets so that other Celestials can be born, but it's really unclear to me why Celestials exist at all and why they do the things that they do. But this is really the part where I have a gripe with the story, as it kind of explains everything really clearly and doesn't really leave anything to the imagination. You know how Lovecraftian stories also tell similar events of cosmic beings, but their motivations are really unknown and unknowable, and that really gives this sort of fear of the unknown. But here, it's like all wrapped up in a neat little bow with almost everything explained. It kind of takes away all the mystery for me. Okay, anyway, so next up they visit Druig. So they arrive in this village in the middle of what looks like the Amazon forest. They don't really have that glowing eyes of being mind controlled, but everyone seems to be happy. So Druig said that in the past, he wanted to take control of the minds of everyone on the planet, but decided against it. My question here is that it really feels like everyone's powers are on unequal footing in terms of its scaling. You have Icarus who can fly and shoot lasers in super strength, which other members doesn't seem to be able to do. I kind of expected everyone to be able to fly and have super strength. You then have Druig who says he can control the minds of everyone on the planet at the same time, which is, not a small deal. And then you have Kingo who can shoot little lasers from his fingers. or charge up like a Kamehameha wave, but that doesn't seem to do a lot of damage either way. And Cersei cannot transmute anything that is sentient, but now she finds out that she can also transmute and turn things that are sentient, so she turns one of the deviants into a tree. So it really seems like their power levels are not in any way, shape, or form on the same level. Gilgamesh then goes to protect Thena when she was in some kind of a trance, but he dies protecting her, and the deviant absorbs his power and evolves into a more human-like being called Crow. I know he's a deviant. Thena wakes up a little bit later and is understandably sad and really pissed off. They then go visit Phastos, who is the first openly gay superhero in the MCU, and I do have to commend this movie for its stance on representation and inclusivity. All audiences, whether they are from different ethnicities or people from marginalized communities, almost everyone is included here. They then all join up on the ship and decide how they can stop the emergence from happening. Icarus then reveals that, nope, he won't allow them to do this, which is kind of weird because he's been following everyone on this journey. Like, why didn't he stop Cersei and Sprite at the very beginning? Anyway, so we find out that Icarus was the one who pushed Ajax into the wolves' den, or the deviants' den, and one of the deviants absorbed her powers, the same one who killed and absorbed Gilgamesh's powers. So Icarus is still in love with Cersei, and that's why he couldn't kill her specifically, and that's why he left her. Because a couple centuries ago, Ajax told him the truth about everything, including the celestial egg and how everyone would die. I guess the main theme here and of the movie is love. Because the rest of the Eternals love humanity, that's why Ajax decided to go against Arashem's will, and that's why everyone now is trying to see if they can stop the emergence. This is also why Icarus leaves Cersei, because he loved her so much, but learning the truth, he thought that eventually he would have to tell Cersei about it and it would crush her. He really is a tragic character, and I love that he had this depth to his character. Sprite is stuck as a child, and she comes to realize that she loves Icarus as well, but can't do anything about it because she's in a child's body. So when Icarus leaves, she follows him. Kingo also leaves the ship for some reason that I really didn't understand here. He kind of disappears for the rest of the movie from here on out, and skips the final fight entirely, only showing up at the very end of the movie. So everyone else decides that Druig can try to control the celestial baby as it borns itself from the planet, by having everyone that's left connecting their minds and powers together. So Makari is the one to run around the planet to search for the crack in the egg, or the place on the earth where the celestial will emerge. Again, here I have to commend the movie for its inclusiveness and access, as Lauren Ridloff is a deaf actor portraying a deaf superhero for the first time in the MCU, and they do use sign language throughout the movie wherever they speak with her. Her powers of super speed here is just amazing to watch, as you see her in what looks like a fisheye lens effect of her running super fast with the background blurring past around her. I think how they visualize her power here is super cool, and is on par with how Quicksilver's power from X-Men Days of Future Past really innovated on the visuals of his super speed. We then see everyone who was left go to this island with a volcano erupting, supposedly the birthplace of the celestial baby, Tiamat. Icarus arrives to try to stop them along with Sprite. Sprite then stabs Cersei in the back while Makari, Phastos, and Thena fights with Icarus. As they are fighting, out of nowhere Crow the Deviant arrives to join in on the fight. So this is my other negative with the movie. Crow the Deviant here as the villain just doesn't have any presence whatsoever, as he kind of just is there and just shows up. It feels like kind of the villains and the problems for the heroes are kind of disjointed. You have the deviant villain, you also have Icarus turning on his family, which I get, kind of. Then you have the celestial baby. So essentially there are three main antagonistic forces for the Eternals to deal with, and it kind of just falls apart and there's no clear focus. So Thena defeats Crow and takes revenge for Gilgamesh, which I really like because I really love Don Lee as an actor, and I wish that there was more screen time with him and that he will be alive to be carried over to future movies. I mean, but you never know. With all the multiverse stuff going on right now, maybe there is an alternate Gilgamesh we can see in the future. So Tiamat, the Celestial, begins to wake up and emerge from the crust of the earth, and Icarus is now tied up by Phastos, Crow is dead, and there's just one more problem to solve. It feels kind of rushed, but suddenly Cersei and everyone else connects together and turns the Celestial from gold into snow, or maybe marble. I'm not too sure, but the CGI here could use a little bit of more work, as it kind of looks like the texture map is spread out too much and the resolution isn't as crisp, probably because of how large the Celestial is. Everything is solved and Icarus flies into the sun. Yeah, he flies into the sun. I get it. I mean, it's symbolic that he's giving up and reflects on the real mythology of Icarus flying too close to the sun, but I think it's a little too on the nose here. Anyways, everything is solved and Cersei goes back to Kit Harington. By the way, I don't think it's ever mentioned, but I just don't remember what his character's name was. Either way, he will always be Jon Snow to me. Cersei then turns Sprite into a real human so that she can grow up normally and experience all the things that she wanted to, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't have her powers anymore. Cersei and Jon Snow walks in a park, and suddenly you see this foreboding scene where Arishem enters the atmosphere. I think again, like if we didn't know why the Celestials do what they do, and they are unknowable beings similar to Lovecraftian stories, that we'll have this sense of dread. Visually, Arishem hovering over the earth from the perspective of a normal person is super cool, but it is missing that feeling of dread and despair of not knowing what it's going to do to you. Arishem then takes Cersei and 2 other Eternals from Earth and warps away using this red black hole event horizon looking portal. The mid-credit scene is of Makari, Thena, and I think Druig on the ship, saying that they can't contact Cersei and the rest of the family. Then Eros, played by Harry Styles, shows up with a very CG looking goblin person, and they mention something about a star fox. He says that he can help them rescue Cersei from Arishem. Apparently he's the brother of Thanos, and I gotta say, they look nothing alike. And then the post-credit scene is Kit Harington opening a chest with a sword in it that is wrapped in some cloth. Apparently this is the Ebony Blade and his character will return as the Black Knight in future movies. I have no idea who or what that is, as I'm not a comic book reader. But then a voice behind him suddenly asks if he's ready, which apparently is the voice of Mahershala Ali, the actor who will be portraying Blade in an upcoming movie, and I just can't wait for that. Overall, I think the movie is definitely worth the watch, maybe even a couple watches, in theaters and on the biggest screen possible. Definitely recommended. And it seems that the first weekend box office was also pretty good, with a domestic opening box office of 71 million and a global opening of 161 million. That's pretty impressive. I first had really high hopes for this movie when rumors early on saying that Disney thought that this movie was so good that they didn't even know what to do with it, to Kevin Feige praising it before release. And then came the critic reviews that are now in the 40s, which I just don't get. But coming out of the movie, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was, and it just shows that the audience and critic ratings doesn't always match up. And this is definitely a movie worth seeing on the big screen. And that's it. That's my full spoilers review. Please comment down below with your thoughts on the movie, and please like and subscribe to the channel as it helps bring more people to our discussion. More movie reviews are coming, along with some other stuff that I'm planning, maybe some anime or manga reviews or some video game reviews. Let me know what kind of content you would all like to see. Thanks, and have a great day.